Our groceries are an emergency. Our rent is an emergency. Everything is an emergency. I cannot afford to spend every last penny that I have on my debts. Because what I really can't afford is to not have a savings account and not have money in my bank account for when I need to pay for things and when emergencies are more than likely going to arise. I have spent so many years of my life paying off my debt, stressing over debt, that now I just laugh at. Like, somebody commented on one of my videos yesterday about how they spent $12 on grapes. $12 on grapes. Like, we live in such a ridiculous timeline that I just no longer can take debt as seriously as I once did. And looking back, I really wish that I could have not spent all of that money on debt. I really just walked myself into more and more debt every single time. Cars breaking down and oral surgeries, I have been there. I don't think I've ever paid for a car repair with a debit card. It's always come out of my credit cards. And then it just like is a catalyst for more and more debt. No more, no more. The debt for right now during this crazy timeline is getting the minimum payments so that I have as much as I need in my spending account for all of the crazy emergencies that are happening on a daily basis at this point.
Okay, this is no shade to anyone who's paid off a significant amount of debt, especially student loan debt. That is amazing. But I feel like 99% of the stories I hear of people paying off significant amount of debts are people who had the ability to move back in with their parents and not have rent. And I'm genuinely starting to think people think everyone has that ability, and that's just not true. Hence all the people in my comments calling me lazy and stupid because I haven't paid off $50,000 of loans since 2017. My dad died when I was a senior in high school. My mom made it very clear to me that I was on my own the day I turned 18. So I have had to learn all of this by myself, and having the ability to move in with someone rent-free would be amazing, but that's just not possible. I just want people to know that's not the norm for most people. Since the day I graduated college, I've been on my own health insurance. I've had no inheritance. I've had no fallback. And for people to suggest that it's a failure that I've paid $38,000 of loans off in less than 3 years and then waited to see what happened with the student loan forgiveness because I had a Pell Grant, all of my debt was supposed to be forgiven, is so insane on so many levels. If you paid a significant amount of debt off quickly while paying rent with no support, please comment how you did that. Please comment a realistic system that you did that with, because I am getting so frustrated at these comments. It's like laughable at this point. I am so proud of myself and how far I've come. I'm not gonna let you weirdo trolls take that away from me. Like, that's not normal.
You know, there's a lot of truth in what she just said as well. Not everybody has that option to live at home or go home and stay with mom and dad. And even if you're staying with mom and dad, you know, sometimes mom and dad expect you to pay a little bit of something. You know, they're not going to let you live there for free. You know, it may not be as much as if you were, you know, living in an apartment or a house that you're renting. But you do have those parents that are out there that'll let you, you know, just, hey, let me help you get back on your feet. And that's a blessing. But I honestly think a young lady like that, even with the struggle, see, what a lot of people don't understand is they want everything to come easy. Give you an example. Say you're very skinny, you don't have a lot of strength, you've never lifted a weight in your life. When you go to lift that weight at the gym, it's going to be a struggle, okay? But if you keep going back every day and lifting that weight, eventually you will get stronger. See, what a lot of people don't realize is they want to avoid the struggle. Okay, the Bible even says, in this life you will have trouble, trials and tribulations, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. And the point I'm trying to make is you're going to have trials and tribulations in this life. And I think in a situation like her, it's going to make her stronger in the long run. Even though none of us want to go through the pain. Every situation I've been through in my life where it's been a struggle has made me stronger.
Oblivious to how much they're spending, and I just think that we need to have an honest conversation. I don't think that's a correct evaluation about debt, and I think that we need to have a more honest conversation about why people are actually in debt. Are there people who are in massive amounts of credit card debt because they spent really recklessly and they were just, you know, living a lifestyle they couldn't afford? Yes, absolutely. But so many people are also in credit card debt out of absolute necessity. They had groceries they needed to buy, or bills they needed to pay, or there was an emergency, their car broke down, things like that, and they had no other option. Reality is, the majority of people don't actually have an emergency fund, so if something happens when they have an emergency, they actually don't have the cash to pay for it. And the only other option, which logically makes sense, is to put it on a credit card and hope that you can pay it off by the end of the next month. And the reality is that if you have a big expense, the odds of you being able to pay it off at the end of the next month are slim. And then there are other people that like to go into the whole conversation about student loan debt, and we need to pay attention to the fact that so many people are sold the idea that college is the only way to succeed in America. Luckily, I went to a high school where it was a tech vocational high school, so it was never like college is the way. It is college or going into the workforce, whichever one is right for you. Just make sure you're prepared for that phase of your life and you're doing what you need to do to get ready for that. But there are so many to pay attention to the fact that so many people are sold the idea that college is the only way to succeed in America. Luckily, I went to a high school where it was a tech vocational high school, so it was never like college is the way. It is college or going into the workforce, whichever one is right for you. Just make sure you're prepared for that phase of your life and you're doing what you need to do to get ready for that. But there are so many people in the US and high schools where college is the only way that they are told they can succeed, and they believe that that is something they must do if they don't want to be broke and unhappy for the rest of their life. So they take out loans to cover the cost because, again, they're sold this idea that once they graduate, they'll have a job paying them enough money to pay off those loans, no problem. And then they graduate, they don't get that job, and now they have debt up to their eyeballs and they don't know what to do. Yes, is there this element of people being financially irresponsible and ending up in debt? Yes, but I just feel like the conversation around debt can get so nasty when we're not realizing the entire scope. And I don't think it's a fair evaluation to say everyone with debt must be super irresponsible. Like, take a second to look back at a bird's eye view and look at the systemic issues that are causing people to go into debt before you judge someone for the debt that they have.
You know, for her to be so young, she makes excellent points. I couldn't have said it better. College, I believe, is a propaganda machine, and it sets you up to start off in a lot of debt. And I'm not putting college education down, but we've been told in this society that we have to get a college degree, that we have to do this and we have to do that, or we won't be able to get that. How many people do you know that have it, still can't find a job?
That whole time I lived off of savings. I drained my Roth IRA. I drained my 401k. I took out a personal loan. I put probably $15,000 on credit cards because I didn't have enough fucking money to live. And I'm not someone who's buying shit. Like, just my fixed expenses I was not able to provide for. Like, sometimes I'll treat myself to a $2 icy once a week. Like, that's the level of frugal I've been. Maybe the occasional bubble tea. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. But it's not enough to accumulate like $25,000 of extra debt I didn't have. No one really talks about the debt cycle of unemployment or of getting laid off, wherein once your savings are done, you're fucked. Like, you just have to accumulate debt or you literally will get evicted. I'm so sorry that's your position, friend.
$55,000 worth of credit card debt? Do you see how my eye's twitching? That shit stresses me out. Like, $55,000 is my take-home salary from my last job. Like, I think I'm just morbidly curious on, like, what gets you to the point of $55,000 worth of credit card debt? Also, who gave you $55,000 worth of credit in general? Like, not to mention, my credit usage, way high. Like 90-something%. So my interest rates, 30%. Like, the interest would make me want to throw up.
One of my biggest pet peeves with financial planners and advisors, whether or not they're professional or amateur ones here on TikTok or on blogs or whatever, is that they treat credit card debt like a sin, right? Like a personal failing. And they give the same advice, which I can't believe people pay for, because to me it's like obvious and you can find literally everywhere, which is pay off your credit card balance every month. If you can't, make sure that you stay under 30% of your credit limit. Invest in EFTs. And index funds. Make sure that you have an emergency fund of at least $1,000 and ideally 3 months like salary. Like, we know this. Everyone knows this. You are not enlightening anybody. Listen, I've had a budget for the last 15 years that I've dutifully followed. I bought like one TV in the last 15 years. I haven't left the country to go on vacation in the last 15 years. I bought one laptop in that time. The biggest personal luxury I've allotted myself are my Sony headphones, which I kind of need for work anyway. But what did I do? Well, I made the mortal sin of deciding to have children, in my 20s. Big mistake. And also, I guess, not being a doctor or a lawyer or some sort of entrepreneurial hustler, because I can tell you, as someone who is dutifully budgeted, as someone who has a nice stable job, budgets don't make money appear. They don't increase your income. And sometimes you just have to go into credit card debt. And this idea that it's a choice, and obviously some people they need financial help. They need help planning, help budgeting. I'm not saying that's not the case, but assuming that everyone who has credit card debt is like a financially stupid person is insulting, and it's just not true, and it's not helpful. So until we remove the stigma of credit card debt, financial planners are kind of useless for the vast majority of people. You're kind of not helping. Anyway, that's it. Rant over. Watch Brown's TikTok.
Actually, budgeting doesn't always mean that you're going to be spending within your means or that you won't accumulate debt, because you cannot budget your way out of not making enough money. And unfortunately, those of us who have found ourselves in debt, it was simply because we didn't have the money to pay for the things we needed at the time, so we used credit. And I have no shame in that, and I refuse to have shame in that. A lot of us were affected by the pandemic, and not just that. It doesn't even have to be something as major as a car accident or medical emergency or student loan debt. Like, shit happens throughout our lives. We're here for quite a few decades. We're not always going to be able to pay for every last thing out of pocket. Yes, you can budget, you can have your savings, you can invest, you can have your 401k, and hopefully that works out. Like, that's my plan, hoping for the best. But shit happens, and I will never forget that. I also go out of my way to try to make more and more and more money as the cost of living increases, because like I said at the beginning, you cannot budget your way out of not making enough money.
Nobody asked for this, but here are some things I learned since working in debt collection. Let's go. We aren't calling you. The computer is. I have no idea how many times you've been called. I don't know who you spoke to before. All I did was sit down and clock in. Please stop yelling at me. I am not calling you. The computer is. If we are calling you, it's because somewhere in the system, they know that you're receiving some type of payment. It is all connected through the computers. They aren't going to start generating calls out until they're seeing some form of payments going into your bank account. There are two different types of debt collectors, third party and first party. Third party is where they sold the debt off, and now it belongs to that debt collector. First party means the debt collector is collecting on behalf of the person that you owe. First party will 9 times out of 10 take you to court. Everything you say on them phone calls can and will be used against you in court if they do take you to court. It is all recorded. They will pull it all up in front of you and in front of that judge. No, I do not get a commission if you pay your debt. I get absolutely nothing, okay? I actually don't get paid enough to deal with this shit. I am trying to help you, and that is it. Yes, you can negotiate the debt at any given point. There are always 3 options available for you when we call. We're always going to try to get you to pay the whole amount, but there's always 2 other options, and they're usually, the first option is like 15%, then the second option is a 20%, and then after that, the supervisor can do a certain amount, the person above the supervisor can do another certain amount, etc., etc., etc. You can always negotiate your debts. You do not have to pay the amount that's actually owed. The older the debt, the more desperate the debtor. So you can really, really negotiate pretty low. You do not need to sit on the phone, cursing us out, sitting in silence, yelling or whatever. You can simply just tell us to not contact you again, and we never will. But if you don't say out of your mouth verbally that you do not wish to be contacted in any forms, the computer is going to continue to contact you.
See, that young lady right there just gave all of you some nuggets when it comes to debt, especially if you're in that position where you've got a lot of debt and debt collectors are calling and you're just not sure what to do. Excellent advice there. Maybe I'm old school. Well, I'm definitely old school. But the one thing I will say is I do agree that there is inflation. Prices have gone pretty high in some areas. But I think the crux of what I hear throughout all these rants is some of it is lower paying jobs, some of it is a little bit of the inflation, and some of it is just bad choices, bad financial choices, and some of it is just understanding that we've all been where you're at. You think when I started working in my 20s, I was making top tier money. I remember always looking for a different job or something that I could do to generate more income. That's just part of life. You know, trying to put yourself in a position to better yourself. And I'm a firm believer that as long as you keep grinding and you keep searching and you pray and you ask God, Lord, send me those people into my path, as far as a different type of a job opportunity, He will do it. He's done it for me. He's done it for my wife. I know He will do it. And the sad thing is, a lot of people don't believe that there's a God. A lot of people don't believe that He answers prayer. But the other caveat to this whole craziness is delayed gratification. Many of us want everything right now. That's not life. I'm just going to give you one biblical example. Remember when the story of Moses, most people, whether you're a believer or not, know the story of Moses. Remember when Moses was being raised as a child of Pharaoh, grew up in Pharaoh's house, and was going to be the prince of Egypt one day. But again, God got a hold of his heart. He recognized who he was. God called him out of that scenario and sent him into the wilderness. I mean, just guess how long he was in the wilderness. 40 years. Now, you try to wrap your head around that. And I'm not saying that's what God's going to do in your situation. What I'm saying is you have to have some patience. You have to make good choices because there are consequences to our choices. And you have to do your best to operate within your budget. I mean, I live a pretty comfortable life now, but it wasn't always that way. And the majority of the people I see in these videos are young people. And they're venting and they're ranting. Well, I can't pay this, I can't pay that. And if you kind of read between the lines, a lot of it is bad choices. Some of it is the inflation. Some of it is they're just not making enough. There's so many variables to these issues that it's hard to really just kind of pinpoint and give you one reason why this is. My last 2 cents, and then I'm going to get off here, is delayed gratification, work hard, live on a budget, do whatever it is you have to do to make ends meet. If you want to go out and try to do additional things, start a business, there's a lot of opportunities. But even doing that does not come overnight. It takes time. It takes work. It takes grinding. It takes effort, So I just want to encourage you today, if you're in a situation similar to what these people are struggling with, I'm hearing a lot of people also talking about, they can't pay their rent or they can't do that. Improvise. If you have to get an apartment and get you 2 or 3 roommates, do what you have to do. I don't know what it is with this generation that wants to start out in their life's journey at 20, 21 years old, and they want to have what their parents have. Okay, I've been working my butt off since I was 16 years old. Even before that, my first job was at 12. Okay, and I don't know if that has left that mindset of this younger generation. I don't know if that has left, but I'm telling you just from life experience, give your heart to Christ. Put your trust in Him. Quit putting your trust in a job or your circumstances. Trust Him. Okay, He will provide. God is your provider, not you. I go out every day and work, but who gives me the physical ability to do that? Who provided me with the opportunities and the job to generate income for my family? Okay, different perspective. Look at it from that perspective. Instead of getting on and complaining about what you don't have and how hard it is, change this. Change how you're viewing the situation. Be willing to do whatever you have to do to get where you're going. If you have to eat rice and beans for a year, eat rice and beans for a year. And some of you will frown at that. But I'm telling you, if you're willing to do what this person over here is not willing to do, then one day you'll be able to live in a way that person's not going to be able to live because they didn't do what it was that you made the decision to do. Life is hard. It's like peaks and valleys. It ebbs and flows. You have the good and you have the bad. I've been there. You're going to be there. Some of it sounds like you're there right now. Again, if you haven't given your life to Christ, continue to hold on to Christ. Put your trust in Him. Ride it out. You might be in a valley right now, but eventually you will come out of that valley and you'll be on the mountaintop. Trust me. It's almost 60 years of living it. Love you guys, and I will check you on the next one. Later.